Hi, everyone, and welcome. We are pleased to have you join us today. I am Allison Pettin, a financial advisor at Secure Planning Group. So for our content today, we are extremely excited. We have at SPG partnered with our local contact, Al Sorochetti with Nationwide, and he has even brought in a special guest for today, Roberta Eckert. So I'm going to turn it over to Al to introduce Roberta.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Al Sorochetti, and Allison, thank you very much for having me today. Most importantly, thank you to everyone on the call for joining us. We really appreciate your time, especially when I know it's so beautiful outside. So we're going to keep this to a good half an hour, hopefully give you some good information that you can take and have a good conversation with Allison and the team. But I'm not actually the speaker today. I'm just here to kick things off. But I am very pleased to introduce Roberta Eckert. And Roberta is our director of the Retirement Institute's Insight and Solutions team at Nationwide. Now, I have known Roberta for a very long time, and the thing that I find the best about Roberta is she makes the information engaging, where you'll start thinking about things that have great ideas that you can then walk away with. Now, her team is dedicated to focusing on things that we need to plan and miss maybe coming up in retirement, as far as Social Security, healthcare, long-term care cost retirement, and Medicare. So while we're having these conversations, think about how those things will impact you. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Roberta. Roberta, thank you for joining us today. I hope everyone finds this time very useful. Have a wonderful morning. And Roberta, it's all you.
Thank you. And I hope so too. And I'll echo that. I live in Virginia. It was pollen city the past few weeks. The rain came last night, got rid of it all. It's really nice out. So we won't be that long, but what we will do is make sure that we give you some useful information that you can then share with or talk about with Allison and the team. Well, you'll notice that the topic today is women and retirement. And admittedly, periodically, we get people who say, well, what's the difference? Why are we focusing on women, et cetera, et cetera? And I'll tell you a quick story. This story happened back about 12 to 15 years ago. It was in March. And if you know, March is Women's History Month. And way up in space in the International Space Station, they were ready to plan the all-female spacewalk. It was going to be the first all-female spacewalk in years, like 30 years. And so they're getting ready to suit up and go out and walk around in space. And when the women went into the spacesuit locker, I guess that maybe is probably not what they call it, but anyway, they went to the spacesuit locker, and apparently there are different arms that you attach to the torso, and then you get your leg components, and you build yourself a spacesuit when you're ready to go out on this spacewalk, depending upon your size. Well, unfortunately, there was not enough spacesuit components so that all of the women could suit up and go out into space. There weren't enough in their size. And I thought later, that's really indicative of a lot of things. Women's journey to retirement is different from men's, and there is no one size fits all. There's no one size fits all when it comes to suiting up in a spacesuit. There's no one size fits all when it comes to retirement. So today we're going to talk about the 3 challenges that women face when they are going through the retirement planning process. Now, we work for Nationwide, Al and I do. And one thing I wanted to mention about that is that even though we work for Nationwide, we're not going to be talking about any Nationwide products. I'm not going to be giving you any tax advice. You probably got plenty of that yesterday. I'm not giving you any legal advice. And I've been in the business a very long time and have all my financial advisor requirements, but I'm not going to give you financial advice. That's Allison and her team's role in all of this. So with that, we're going to touch on these few things. One is embracing some opportunities that come with a longer lifespan. We're going to talk a little bit about some other challenges that women face on this road to retirement. And then we're going to talk about a couple thoughts around optimizing your retirement income, but at the same time, we don't want to overlook some of the bigger expenses that we, especially as females, are going to face. And that certainly is healthcare and its partner in crime, long-term care. Well, let's go through some statistics. It's not my job or my intent to read slides to you, but I think it's really compelling about the changes that women have made and the fundamental strides in things like business and politics and education and pop culture. All of these things, women have made tremendous strides. And you can see that more than 5 million women have salaries. That's not total compensation, that's just the salary part. Over $100,000, almost half are earning the same or more as their partner. And we're becoming more and more big decision makers. Now, if I said to my mother, hey, do you consider yourself a decision maker financially? She'd probably say, well, yeah, I pay all the bills and I figure out, where the specials are at the grocery store and all those stereotypical things, because that was the environment that my mother grew up in. But now we're talking about big picture decision making, where 30% of women who are affluent and married are making those bigger, or weighing in on those bigger choices. And we're driving a ton of business and spending. In fact, by the year 3030, I love the cadence of the 30 number. Sorry, by the year 2030, we expect to control close to $30 trillion. That's trillion with a T. So when you think about the influence and control of wealth, we are not a niche market and we're not a demographic. We are actually a very large group that controls a very large amount of wealth, and yet our needs are a little different. Now, I say to people quite frequently, when you're thinking about your retirement, really want you to sit back and visualize it. Now, this might sound a little touchy-feely, but think about what you're going to be doing, who you're doing it with, what you're going to do when you get up every morning. Like, really visualize yourself going through those day-to-day things that you expect to be doing. And as I said, before you think that it sounds a little touchy-feely, I will draw your attention to this picture. And if I were standing in front of you doing a in-person presentation, I would say to you, all right, does anybody know who these folks are? And it's kind of a trick question. I know Al knows because he's seen me present this topic very frequently, but it's kind of a trick question. But look carefully and look at the top box on the screen and look carefully again. It's my parents. You gotta love this World War II photo. Mom's 24 years old. She's rocking this fur coat. My father's a captain in the Army. Maybe he was a first lieutenant then. Nevertheless, why am I showing you this picture? Because for the women today that are really starting to take more control of their retirement, or they're just about at the threshold, it could be that they are the first women in their family that's actually created a retirement based on their own terms and not as a function of what their husband's decisions were. And if I had said to my mother, hey, Mom, what does your retirement look like? She would look at me like I grew a second head. And she would say, what are you talking about? Whatever your father does, I'll fall in line, or words to that effect. My father had the Army pension. He worked and invested. He had his own retirement account, all those things. And my mother, again, sort of fell in line. Maybe did the traditional things, traveled, visited with the grandchildren, that sort of thing. But a lot of women today don't have a role model who blazed a real retirement path ahead of them based on their own goals, objectives, and desires. So with that, we're going to talk about these few things that we really want to dial into a little bit more carefully, because they have a real impact on your decisions and your planning ahead of time. One of them is One of them is longevity. And we call it a double-sided issue because you could live a really long life. In fact, statistically speaking, you will live longer than your male counterparts. And the other side of the double side is that you could spend a long time in retirement, and all those things you visualize doing and enjoying and all that, you're going to have a long time to enjoy all that. But you don't want to rely on statistics when it comes to longevity. If you are 65 today, you've got a 54% chance of reaching age 90 and a 33% chance of reaching age 94. But when you think about the statistics, it's a good place to start, but add your family's life expectancy as an overlay. Unfortunately, my mom of the picture back there was probably already smoking about 3 years into it when that photograph was taken. And she passed away of emphysema when she was 78 years old. That was 23 years ago. So, a lot of strides have been made then in health and all those kinds of things. Certainly a lot of warnings against smoking. When my mom was smoking, it was glamorous and kept your weight down. It made you look sexy. But now, not so much. So when I think about my own life expectancy, I live a pretty healthy lifestyle. I don't smoke. Medical advances have occurred. So I might take these numbers and boost them up a little bit to really kind of get a better feel of what my own life expectancy looks like. So you might have a really enjoyable retirement because you might have a longer life expectancy, but at the same time, it needs to be funded and it needs to be paid for. And one of the things that we realize as we do a lot of research in my area, which is called, again, the Nationwide Retirement Institute, is that we're looking at a lot of demographical data, a lot of statistical analysis, all these kinds of things. But this has been validated year over year over year, starting to get a little better. But traditionally or stereotypically, women have lower earnings. And that's a function of a couple of things. Number one, the jobs that women were available to women back in the day, and to some extent, even our retirees now, were more predominantly female, secretarial, administrative, not transportation, but hospitality, nursing, things like that. You wouldn't see so much, a lot of women as chairmen of boards or CEOs of major corporations, as you are starting to see more and more now. And so those roles traditionally paid a little less. Another thing is that women had more of a I don't want to say opportunity, were more women had the role in their family where they were more likely to step in and out of the workforce as a consequence of caregiving. And that caregiving could result in one of two aspects. And we'll look at this slide in just a sec. But those two aspects could be either caring for an aging relative, and that's what a lot of people traditionally think of when they think of role of caregiver. But it also could be stepping out of the workforce to pay or to raise the little kids. My stepdaughter's doing exactly that. She's got 3 little kids, one who's 6, one who's 4, and one who just turned 1. She's got her hands full for sure, but she stepped out of the workforce. And for women that step out of the workforce for whatever reason, that has an impact on a lot of things. It has an impact on maybe your retirement plan that's provided by your employer, the ability for you to contribute to that plan, the employer match, any IRA maybe you've set up on your own, a pension if one's available, and Social Security. Social Security benefits are based on your top 35 years of work. And it's not our intent to do a deep dive into Social Security today. If you have any interest in that, I will let you know that we do have a program centered around that. So chat with Allison and see if that's of interest to you. But if they're going to look at the top 35 years of employment and you only have, say, 20 or 25 years, then those other years, 10 or 5 years where you weren't working, would result in a check or a Social Security benefit that's lower than you might be able to get. So again, we could talk more about that at a future date, but Social Security benefits also would be impacted by not having at least 35 years of employment. So we're going to look a little bit deeper about this. So there's a challenge about lower earnings. There's a challenge that revolves around caregiving. There's a challenge that revolves around life expectancy. And one sort of blends into another, that blends into another. It's sort of like they chase each other around, right? If you step out of the workforce because of a caregiving situation, it's probably going to impact your earnings. And, so if you've got a long life expectancy, then you really need to have better earnings to pay for that retirement. So we're going to switch for a few minutes and we're going to chat a little bit about optimizing your retirement income. So what are the steps that you can take and talk to Allison about in order to get the biggest bang for your buck once you're planning your retirement? Well, the good news is that about 70% of women that we spoke to about 3 years ago said, nothing to see here. We've got this. We've got a plan to protect ourselves against outliving our savings in retirement. And I said to myself, well, that's wonderful. That's excellent news. And then the people that did the study said, not so fast. First of all, just because someone's not outliving their savings doesn't mean that they have the relevant income streams that they need in order to pay all their bills in retirement. So it's great not to outlive your savings, but your savings might not be enough in order to pay for that retirement that you're going to need a bigger amount of money for because you're going to live longer, et cetera, et cetera. So the other thing that was pointed out to me was that there are a few things that tended to be overlooked. One is the ability to set up different accounts so that when you are set up different accounts from a tax perspective, taxes on everybody's mind today. I finished up paying my accountant yesterday, literally at 6:00 p.m. But in any event, taxes and how you take money out of your various savings and retirement accounts have a relevance to how long your money could potentially last in retirement. Second, Social Security benefits, not only when you claim, but how you claim could result in a higher check for yourself. And again, we don't want to overlook the impact of healthcare and long-term care. So we're going to touch on each one of these as we go forward for our time together. And first of all, I'm going to start with that middle box, which was Social Security. And this is one of my very favorite statistics that we have created. Number one, we went to a lot of different people, men and women, and we said, listen, do you know all of the levers that you need to pull in order to get the biggest check that you are entitled to when it comes to claim Social Security? And 54% of them said, why, yes, we do. And we said, well, that's great. Really glad to hear that. Can you name what those levers are? And only 6% were able to do it. So overwhelmingly amongst men and women, there is an overconfidence in understanding the rules, much less how to make those rules work in your advantage and for your favor. Now, one of the biggest things that were missed was something called full retirement age. And again, we're not doing a deep dive into Social Security today, but more than 63% of baby boomers didn't know what this age is or what age they needed to achieve in order to receive their full Social Security benefit. So here's how it works. The full retirement age is an age that you achieve, and at that point, you will receive 100% of your benefit, regardless of whether it's the benefit that you would receive based on your own work history, if it's a benefit that you're receiving as a result of being a spouse, a divorced spouse, a surviving spouse, a single person, whatever it is, whatever the benefit, if you wait till full retirement age, you will get 100% of that benefit. Now, for your own benefit, meaning the one that you would receive based on your work history, if you claim this benefit early, as well as any other benefit, then it would result in a reduction that lasts pretty much for the rest of your life, unless you switch benefits later based on certain triggers. For your own benefit, if you can delay claiming, there would be a credit involved. Well, the other thing to point out about full retirement age is that it's based upon the year you were born. So if you look at the little chart here on the right-hand side of the screen, if you were born in 1956, your full retirement age is 66 and 4 months. If you were born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 67. So the point is that there's a lot of misunderstanding that people think full retirement age is 65 years old. It's not. It used to be, but they changed it back in like the 80s. And there are a lot of people that think, well, I'm going to sign up for Medicare at age 65. That's okay, but I'm going to sign up for Social Security at the same time as long as I'm at it. Well, if you sign up for your Social Security benefits at 65, you've locked down a reduction. And one other thing that people miss, and it results in some unhappy moments, is they believe that even if they claim, say, as early as possible, which is age 62, that once they hit full retirement age, that benefit will automatically increase to the amount that they would receive as if they claimed at 66. Not true. That reduction is locked and loaded. So the longer you wait, the bigger your check. And not everybody can do that. We never suggest you do one thing or another, but we want to make sure that people have as much information as they possibly can so that along with Allison, the best decision can be formulated in a big picture. At the same time, despite all that, more than half of, or just exactly half of American women leave money on the table because they've claimed their benefits early. So we would invite you to work with Allison, who can work with us to arrange a report that we can create for you that lays out what your options are. But this is just a quick math example, if you will, about how this would play out. Let's say your full retirement age is 67 years old. You're getting your full benefit. If you claimed at 62, you're getting $700, and that's not going to change unless you move over to a spousal benefit or a surviving spousal benefit or so forth. But if you can wait past 67, there's an 8% annual credit that ends at age 70. So those are things that could really impact your income in retirement, and something that certainly is well worth investigating a little further. Well, we're not here to talk about nationwide products, but I will tell you about a service that is, gosh, I feel like an infomercial person, a service that's available at no charge to you. And Allison can work with you in creating a report that lays out 4 claiming options for you that has been customized to your specific situation. Just a couple screenshots here of what that report looks like and what your gap might be between how much of your desired income is coming from Social Security and how much you actually want. Just about everybody's got a gap because Social Security was never intended to pay for all of your bills and all of your income needs in retirement. So get a good understanding, talk to Allison a little bit more and her team about your options. And if you like, we can put the questionnaire, she can put the questionnaire in your hands so that you can create that report. Well, when we move over to another way in which you might be able to maximize your income, I like to think about this as your nest egg. And everybody thinks about their nest egg. You know, I'm building my nest egg, and my nest egg's growing, and my nest egg this, and my nest egg that. Stop thinking about your nest egg. You do not have a nest egg anymore. What you have is a carton of eggs. And the choice that you and Allison are going to make is, what egg do you crack first in order to provide income in retirement? So your eggs would look something like this. Yes, I know it's a corny analogy, but I still love it. So it looks like this. You've got taxable eggs, you've got tax defer eggs, and you've got tax-free eggs. And to the extent that you take income maybe out of your taxable accounts up to certain income tax bracket thresholds, and then to avoid kicking yourself into the next threshold or the next bracket, maybe then you take money out of tax-free accounts. But the trick in all of that is to make sure that you create those income streams in advance of retiring so that you've got the flexibility to pick and choose from these eggs in the carton to determine which you're going to crack first and how all of that works together so that you are not inadvertently putting yourself into a spot where every single dollar of your income is taxable, and that might pop you into a higher bracket. And I think it stands to reason that if you can save money on taxes, that money is sitting in your portfolio, earning, potentially compounding, growing, and therefore that will help your portfolio last for a longer period of time. That's the idea. Anyway, so very important to talk about tax efficiencies and what kinds of accounts you could set up now in order to, again, give you that flexibility in retirement. So I'm not going to share with my example right now. We'll come back to that maybe later. But there are some ideas you could talk to with your tax preparer Allison's team, maybe a Roth conversion, contribute to a health savings account. Those are triple tax-free ways to save for healthcare costs, whether now or whether you're retired. Take advantage of standard deductions and try and keep yourself in the lowest bracket you can. And think about where your assets are held. If you're planning on holding some different types of assets and you're planning on selling them within a certain period of time, potentially for a gain, long-term capital gains tax rates are more favorable to you than ordinary income tax rates. So again, that's something that you would have a conversation with Allison and her team about, but all kinds of things to consider in order to keep as much money out of the government's hands as possible. I always like to think that it is our civic responsibility to pay our taxes every year when they're due. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that we've got to tip the government either by spending or by paying excess money in taxes. Well, for the next few minutes, I'm going to spend some time on healthcare because we've talked about ways to drive money into your portfolio and your checking account once you're retired. But we don't want to overlook one of the biggest costs in retirement, and that's healthcare costs. It's going to last you for the longest period of time, and it's going to be one of the biggest costs you have. One takeaway for you, Medicare doesn't pay for everything, and it works differently than your employer benefit healthcare plan does. There are some situations where you want to make sure you make decisions at certain times to avoid painful penalties that can last forever. And you also want to make sure that you know what the out-of-pocket costs would likely be so that, again, you can work on starting to accumulate some money to pay for those as well. Well, as I mentioned when we got started, healthcare costs have a partner in crime, and that is long-term care. People aren't quite sure what long-term care really is. First of all, it is an event. It's not a place. It's not a place where you go, although a lot of times the majority of individuals who may be in assisted living or nursing homes might be long-term care eligible, but it is an event. And really what it is a range of supports and services that have been created to help you live as independently and as safely as you can when you can't perform everyday activities on your own. I like to think of this when I get up in the morning, all the things I need to do before I get out the door. I take a shower, I eat breakfast, I bathe, I use the bathroom, things like that. And when pressed, and not pressed too hard either, a lot of people would prefer to receive that kind of help, assistance, and care at home. But a lot of times when the individuals hear the term long-term care, some myths bubble up, and I'll share those with you. And then we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left, I believe. First of all, Medicare does not cover long-term care. It might step in and cover 100 days. You've got to jump through about 3 rings of fire in order to get Medicare to cover for it. So best to just leave it alone and realize that Medicare does not cover long-term care, nor will your health or disability insurance cover it. And in the old days, long-term care meant you were in a nursing home, but not anymore. In fact, a lot of people who have long-term care insurance utilize that to stay at home, where a lot of people would prefer to be. And the one that is most female-centric is this last myth, and that is that my spouse can take care of me. Well, think about this for a minute. If you're in a conventional heterosexual marriage, it is pretty likely your spouse will predecease you. You might have been providing them with informal unpaid care. So that's one edge of what we call, or one side of what we call the long-term care double-edged sword. But then if your spouse passes away, who's going to provide care for you? Which is the other side or edge of the double-edged sword. Women have told us unequivocally they do not want their children stepping into that role. No way, no how, hard stop, not going to happen. So it makes sense, and it's important as you look at your retirement to really formulate a plan for what would happen if you have a long-term care event, including things like where would I receive care? Who's going to pay for, or sorry, who's going to provide the care for me? and how am I going to pay for it? Now, in a similar way, for our Social Security report, we've got one that could assess your long-term care exposure as well as your out-of-pocket healthcare costs. So between that and our Social Security report, those are two great tools that you can take advantage of. Again, they are no cost, they are confidential, and we can provide those questionnaires to Allison if that's something you'd like to take care of or take advantage of. But when it comes to women in retirement, remember, time is on your side. So you've got some time to really put some elements in place in order to make sure that there's nothing that comes out of left field that you hadn't thought about when it comes times for your retirement. And certainly longevity is one of them. Make sure that you're getting your maximum Social Security benefit. One of the easiest ways to do that is wait to claim, but everybody's got different situations and we would never tell you to do that. We're not your advisor, but it is certainly a consideration. Think about tax efficient income strategies. That's that carton of eggs I was talking about. Make sure that you understand the decisions you need to make when you're Medicare eligible at age 65. And as long as you're talking about healthcare, don't forget that long-term care is a big component of anyone's retirement, but especially women, because we fall on the edge of that long-term care sword, double-edged sword. We provide care, then we are the cared for, but we really have to formulate a plan. So with that, there are some last-minute thoughts around a dream team, a tax preparer, an estate attorney, an elder care professional, and certainly Allison and her team, who are your financial professionals and can kind of help put all this together and create that retirement plan that you were visualizing back on slide 3. So with that, I am at time. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about women in retirement. If you hadn't guessed, it's a passion of mine. And I look forward to hearing any questions you might have that you can funnel through Allison once we're done with today's session. So Allison, I'm going to turn it back over to you. We're at time, if not a few minutes over, and you can close us out. Thank you, everybody.
Wow. Roberta, I'm speechless. That was
Hope that's a good thing.
absolutely just
Hope you're not
incredible.
sleepless because I put you to sleep.
No, obviously this is a passion of mine, being a woman in a male dominated field and business. And, a majority of my clients are women, so I'm equally as passionate about this. So thank you for sharing, all of your wisdom, all of the education, 32 years that you've been in this business. We just really, really appreciate you taking the time, out of your day and sharing all this great education with us. So to everybody that's watching this, whether live or on the recorded version, we urge you to please reach out to your Secure Planning Group financial advisor to discuss any of the content that was covered today from Roberta. We definitely want to hear from you, so please reach out to your advisor just because we're not doing any Q&A today. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you to Al. Thank you to Roberta and the rest of the SPG team. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you to the entire team.